The morning sun filtered through the pines at Riverside Park, casting long shadows across the worn hiking trails. Officer Sarah Mitchell adjusted her tactical belt and glanced down at Rex, her 4-year-old Belgian Malinois, who sat alert beside the patrol car. His amber eyes tracked the yellow school buses rolling into the gravel parking lot, ears swiveling toward the sound of excited children's voices. This was supposed to be routine. A community outreach demonstration for Mrs. Henderson's 5th grade class. Show the kids how Rex could detect hidden objects, answer questions about police work, maybe let a few brave students pet him before lunch. Rex stood as the first group of 10-year-olds tumbled out of the bus, their chaperones calling for order. Sarah had done this demonstration 24 times this year, but Rex never treated it as routine. His nostrils flared, sampling the crisp October air. The parking lot, the tree line, the children approaching with a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. Mrs. Henderson, a woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled into a practical bun, approached with her clipboard. Behind her, parent volunteers herded students into loose groups. Sarah counted 6 adults total, each wearing bright yellow volunteer badges. Good ratio for 30 kids. "Officer Mitchell, thank you so much for doing this," Mrs. Henderson said, shaking her hand firmly. "The students have been looking forward to this all week." "Our pleasure," Sarah replied. "Rex loves showing off." At the sound of his name, Rex's tail swept once across the gravel. A few children giggled. Sarah began her usual presentation, explaining how Rex had been trained at 8 weeks old, how his nose could detect scents at concentrations humans couldn't imagine, how he'd helped find missing persons and locate evidence in criminal investigations. The children sat cross-legged on the grass, hanging on every word. One small boy with thick glasses raised his hand. "Has Rex ever found anything really important?" Sarah smiled. "Last month, he helped us locate a missing elderly man who'd wandered away from his care facility. The man had dementia and was lost in the woods for 12 hours. Rex found him in under 20 minutes. The children murmured their approval. Rex remained in his sit position, the picture of discipline, but Sarah noticed his attention wasn't entirely on the crowd. His head kept turning toward the hiking trail that led deeper into the park, toward the old picnic area nobody used anymore. "Now," Sarah continued, "I'm going to hide an article of clothing somewhere in the parking area, and we'll see how fast Rex can find it. Who wants to see that?" Every hand shot up. Sarah walked 30 yards away and tucked one of her gloves behind the rear wheel of a parked truck. When she returned, Rex was already standing. His body language changed. Tense. Focused. His gaze fixed on something beyond the parking lot. "Rex, seek," Sarah commanded. But Rex didn't move toward the truck. Instead, he pulled against his leash, straining toward the trailhead. His whine was high-pitched and urgent, a sound Sarah had only heard a handful of times in their 3 years together. Each time, it meant something was very wrong. "Rex, heel," she said firmly. The dog hesitated, looking back at her with what could only be described as frustration, then reluctantly moved to her side. But every muscle in his body remained coiled, ready to bolt. Mrs. Henderson frowned. "Is everything all right?" "Just give me 1 second," Sarah said quietly. She led Rex away from the children, her own pulse quickening. In the shade of a pine tree, she knelt beside him and looked into his eyes. "What is it, boy? What do you smell?" Rex's body trembled. He pushed against her hand, then turned and pulled toward the trail again, his whine becoming more insistent. Sarah had learned to trust this dog with her life. If Rex was reacting this strongly, something was out there, something that triggered his training. She pulled out her radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I'm at Riverside Park conducting a community event. My K-9 is alerting to something on the North Hiking Trail, requesting backup." The dispatcher's voice crackled back. "Copy, Unit 12. What's the nature of the alert?" Sarah watched Rex, his entire focus locked on that distant trail. Unknown. But it's strong. Rex has never done this during a demonstration before. Sending Unit 7 to your location. ETA 8 minutes. Sarah returned to the group, her professional smile fixed in place. Kids, I need everyone to stay right here with Mrs. Henderson and the chaperones for a few minutes. Rex and I need to check something out. We'll be right back. A small girl with dark braids raised her hand. Is something wrong? Probably nothing, Sarah said, hoping her voice sounded more confident than she felt. But part of Rex's job is to tell me when he notices things that might need attention. That's what makes him such a good partner. Mrs. Henderson met her eyes, and Sarah saw understanding there. The teacher had been through enough school safety trainings to know when something felt off. Take your time, Officer Mitchell. We'll stay put. Sarah released Rex's leash, letting it play out to its full length as they headed up the trail. The moment she gave him the command, the dog surged forward, pulling her into the pine forest. Dead leaves crunched under her boots. The sounds of the children's voices faded behind them. The trail wound upward for about 200 yards before opening into a small clearing where picnic tables sat, weathered and rotting. The park department had stopped maintaining this area 5 years ago, after budget cuts. Beyond the clearing, the trail continued toward the old ranger station that had been abandoned for a decade. Rex bypassed the picnic area entirely and headed for a dense patch of undergrowth about 50 feet off the trail. His behavior intensified. He circled a spot twice, then sat abruptly and barked. Once. Twice. 3 times. Sarah's blood ran cold. That was Rex's trained alert for explosive materials or contraband. She approached carefully, her hand moving instinctively to her service weapon. The area looked undisturbed. Just forest floor covered in dead leaves and pine needles. But Rex didn't make mistakes. She pulled out her flashlight and swept it across the ground. There. A slight depression in the leaves. Too uniform to be natural. Sarah knelt down and carefully brushed away the organic debris. Plastic. Black plastic sheeting, about 3 feet square, covered with a thin layer of dirt and leaves. Amateur concealment, but effective enough if you weren't looking for it, or if you didn't have a dog with an extraordinary nose. Sarah keyed her radio. Dispatch, Unit 12. I've got a buried cache at Riverside Park, approximately 200 yards north of the parking area. Rex has given a positive alert. I need that backup expedited and notify the bomb squad. Copy, Unit 12. Units are 2 minutes out. Sarah secured Rex away from the site, tying his leash to a sturdy pine. Good boy, she murmured, running her hand along his neck. Such a good boy. Rex sat, his eyes never leaving the buried plastic, his tail still now. This wasn't playtime anymore. This was work. Officer Jake Chen arrived first, his hand resting on his sidearm as he jogged up the trail. What have we got? Buried cache. Rex alerted positive for explosives or contraband. I haven't touched it beyond clearing some of the leaves. Jake's jaw tightened. He'd been on the force 15 years, had seen his share of hidden drug stashes and illegal weapons. But something about finding it here, in a public park where children played, made his expression harden. 2 more patrol cars arrived, then the bomb squad van. Lieutenant Paula Winters, a 20-year veteran with close-cropped gray hair, suited up in partial protective gear and approached with her portable X-ray scanner. Everyone back, she ordered, her voice muffled through the face shield. Sarah watched from behind a tree 30 yards away, Rex pressed against her leg. The bomb squad worked methodically, scanning the buried object, taking photographs, mapping the site. After 15 minutes that felt like an hour, Lieutenant Winters carefully lifted one corner of the plastic sheeting. Not explosives, she called out, but you're going to want to see this. Sarah moved forward, leaving Rex secured. What she saw made her stomach drop. Plastic storage containers. 5 of them, each about the size of a large toolbox sealed with duct tape. And inside the clear plastic walls, she could see bundles. Cash, documents, what looked like passports, cell phones, and something that made her throat tighten. Children's clothing, small dresses, tiny shoes. Lieutenant Winters pulled out one of the passports with gloved hands and flipped it open. Her face went pale. These are foreign passports, different countries, and none of the photos match the names. Jake swore under his breath. Sarah pulled out her phone and photographed everything before anyone could touch it further. This isn't just contraband. This is evidence of human trafficking. The words hung in the air like smoke. Lieutenant Winters carefully set the passport back down. We need federal agents here. This is way above our jurisdiction. Sarah nodded, already pulling up the contact information for the Homeland Security Investigations Field Office. As she made the call, she looked back at Rex, who sat vigilant at his post, watching the humans with patient intelligence. That dog had just uncovered something that went far beyond a simple drug stash or stolen goods. He'd found evidence of one of the most heinous crimes imaginable: the systematic exploitation of vulnerable people, most likely children, for profit. The HSI agent who answered was Special Agent Marcus Webb. Sarah explained the situation in clipped professional sentences. There was a long pause on the other end. Secure the scene completely, Webb finally said. Touch nothing else. We're sending a team immediately. How long ago was this buried? Can't tell yet. The leaves suggest it's been here at least a few weeks, maybe months. And you said there's a school group at the park? Yes, 5th graders on a field trip. They're in the parking lot with their teachers. Another pause. Keep them there. We're going to need to interview everyone who was at that park today. Someone buried this, and there's a chance they've been watching it. We need to know if anyone saw suspicious activity. Sarah felt ice in her veins. Someone had been using this public park, this place where children played, to hide evidence of child trafficking. The violation of it made her hands shake with barely controlled rage. Understood. How long until your team arrives? 20 minutes. And Officer Mitchell? That dog of yours may have just broken open a case that's been active for 2 years. We've been tracking a trafficking ring that moves children through the Southeast. We had intel they were using rural parks as dead drops, but we could never pinpoint the locations. Your K-9 just gave us our first solid evidence. After she hung up, Sarah walked back to Rex and knelt beside him. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her face into his fur. The dog leaned into her, solid and warm and utterly trustworthy. You did good, she whispered. You did so good. Back at the parking lot, Mrs. Henderson had kept the children occupied with an impromptu nature scavenger hunt. But Sarah could see the worry in the teacher's eyes. She pulled Mrs. Henderson aside, along with the parent chaperones. I need you all to stay calm, Sarah said quietly. But we've discovered something that requires a federal investigation. Homeland Security is on the way. No one is in danger, but they're going to need to speak with everyone here. Is there anyone in your group who saw anything unusual this morning? Anyone who noticed people in the park before you arrived? A father named Tom, wearing a university sweatshirt, raised his hand hesitantly. I got here about 20 minutes before the buses. There was a pickup truck parked near the trailhead. Older model, dark green. It left right before the first bus pulled in. Sarah's pulse jumped. Did you get a license plate? No, but I remember thinking it was weird because the park just opened and the guy was already leaving, like he'd been here since before dawn. Can you describe him? White male, maybe 40s, baseball cap, sunglasses, average build. I didn't get a great look. Sarah took detailed notes. By the time she finished, 3 black SUVs were rolling into the parking lot. Federal agents in Navy windbreakers with HSI emblazoned across the back emerged with the practiced efficiency of people who'd done this many times before. Special Agent Webb was a tall black man with silver at his temples and eyes that missed nothing. He shook Sarah's hand firmly. "Show me." Sarah led him and 3 other agents up the trail, Rex trotting beside her. When they reached the site, Webb knelt beside the unearthed containers and studied them for a long moment. His jaw worked. "This is it," he said finally. "This is their main cache for this region." He looked up at Sarah. "Officer, your dog just became the star witness in a federal trafficking case. These containers hold evidence that will lead us to the people responsible for moving dozens of children across state lines for exploitation." One of the other agents, a woman with short dark hair named Silva, was photographing the passports. "These match the pattern. Falsified documents, multiple countries of origin. The children in these photos are between 6 and 14, and based on the dates, some of these documents are only 3 weeks old." Webb stood and looked towards the distant parking lot, where children's laughter drifted through the trees. "They're still operational. They buried this recently, which means they're still using this location. We need to set up surveillance immediately." "There's more," Sarah said, and explained about the green pickup truck. Webb's eyes sharpened. "We need that description distributed immediately. Silva, get on it. I want every law enforcement agency within 200 miles on alert. Green pickup, older model, male driver in his 40s. Over the next 3 hours, Riverside Park transformed into a crime scene. FBI agents joined the HSI team. A forensics unit arrived with ground-penetrating radar to check for additional buried items. K-9 units from the state police were called in to sweep the entire park. The children had been moved to the nearby community center where agents conducted gentle interviews, asking if anyone had seen people or vehicles that seemed out of place. The kids thought it was exciting, being interviewed by real federal agents, not understanding the darkness that had touched their field trip. Sarah stayed at the burial site with Rex, watching the systematic excavation. The forensics team found 2 more caches. One contained weapons, semi-automatic rifles, handguns, ammunition. The other held ledgers, actual handwritten notebooks detailing transactions, names, dates, amounts of money, locations. "They're old school," Webb explained, standing beside Sarah as they watched a forensic accountant photograph each page. "They don't trust digital records. Too easy to trace. But these physical records are going to be their downfall. We've got dates and locations going back 18 months. An agent ran up to Webb, holding a tablet. "Sir, we got a hit. Green Chevy pickup, registered to a Thomas Carson, address in Millerton, 30 miles south. Vehicle was flagged by a traffic camera 2 miles from here at 6:15 this morning." Webb's face hardened with satisfaction. "Get me a warrant. I want a team ready to move on that address within the hour." He turned to Sarah. "I need your K-9. We're going to need him to clear Carson's property. If he's hiding evidence there, Rex can find it." Sarah felt Rex press against her leg, as if he understood the conversation. "We're ready." The drive to Millerton was tense. Sarah rode with Webb in the lead SUV, Rex in his special harness in the back seat. Behind them, a convoy of federal and local law enforcement vehicles followed. "This ring has been operating for over 2 years, Webb explained as they drove. "We've had bits and pieces, rescued a few victims, but we could never find their central operation. They move the children like cargo. Rural parks, rest stops, abandoned properties, always moving, never staying in one place long enough for us to track them. But your dog just gave us our first solid link." "How many children?" Sarah asked quietly. Webb's jaw tightened. "At least 40 that we know of. Brought in from Central America, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe. Promised their families they'd have opportunities in America, education, jobs. Instead, they were sold." Sarah felt sick. "Are any of them local? The children?" "Some. They also target runaways, kids in foster care, anyone without strong family connections, people no one will immediately report missing. The Carson property was a run-down farmhouse on 20 acres of scrubland, peeling paint, sagging porch, windows covered with heavy curtains despite the afternoon sun. 2 vehicles sat in the gravel driveway. One was the green pickup. The tactical team moved first. Agents in full gear approached the house, weapons drawn. "Federal agents, search warrant." The door splintered under the battering ram. Sarah heard shouting inside, the sounds of rapid movement. Then, "Clear, 1 subject in custody." Sarah and Rex waited as instructed, but the dog was trembling with alertness, his nose working overtime. When Webb gave the signal, they approached the house. Thomas Carson sat on his porch in zip-tie restraints, his face red with anger. "This is harassment. I didn't do anything." Webb ignored him. "Officer Mitchell, have your K-9 search the property." Sarah gave Rex the command, and the dog moved with purpose. He cleared the house systematically. Living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, nothing. But when they reached the detached garage, Rex's behavior changed. He circled the building twice, then sat at the side door and barked. Webb was there in seconds. "Open it." The garage door swung wide. At first, Sarah saw only typical garage contents: tools, paint cans, a lawnmower. But Rex moved to the back corner and sat again, his bark insistent. An agent pulled aside a tarp. Underneath was another set of plastic containers, more passports, more ledgers, and a laptop computer. "Bingo," Webb said softly. But Rex wasn't done. He moved to the garage floor and began pawing at a section of concrete. Silva knelt down and examined it closely. "This has been cut and repaired," she said. "Recently." It took the team 15 minutes to break through the concrete patch. Underneath, they found a space about 4 feet deep. And inside that space, sealed plastic bags containing hard drives, cell phones, and stacks of documents. "This is their backup," Webb said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "Everything, every transaction, every victim, every location. Rex just handed us the entire operation on a silver platter." They spent 4 more hours at the Carson property. The laptop yielded names. The hard drives held video surveillance from various locations, including Riverside Park. The documents detailed a network of participants across 7 states. By nightfall, federal agents were executing simultaneous raids at 14 locations. Sarah sat on the tailgate of a tactical vehicle. Rex sprawled at her feet, exhausted from hours of searching. Webb approached with 2 bottles of water and handed her one. "The DA is estimating we can prosecute at least 30 individuals based on what we've found today. And more importantly, we've identified the locations where they're holding children right now. Teams are moving to extract them as we speak." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "How many?" 7 children. We're getting them out tonight. They'll be safe before morning." She looked down at Rex, who lifted his head and met her gaze. This dog, this remarkable animal who'd been trained to detect scents, had just saved 7 lives. Maybe more. Because with the entire trafficking network exposed, how many future victims would never be taken? How many families would never experience that horror? "I need your K-9 to give a statement," Webb said with a slight smile, the first she'd seen from him all day. "We're writing up the report. K-9 Rex alerted to suspicious activity at Riverside Park, leading to the discovery of evidence that dismantled a major child trafficking operation." He's going to be famous in federal law enforcement circles. "He doesn't care about fame," Sarah said, scratching behind Rex's ears. "He just wants his tennis ball and his dinner." "Well, he's earned both, and a commendation. We're recommending him for the National Police Dog Foundation's Award of Valor." 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in a conference room at the federal building, Rex at her side. Special Agent Webb was presenting the results of the investigation to assembled law enforcement agencies from across the region. "Thanks to the alert given by K9 Rex," Webb said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "we were able to dismantle an operation that had been trafficking children for over 2 years. We've arrested 32 individuals. We've rescued 7 children who were being held against their will, and we've identified 12 other victims who are now receiving care and support. The evidence gathered has led to 6 additional investigations in neighboring states." The room broke into applause. Sarah felt her face flush. This wasn't about her. This was about Rex, about the incredible capability of these working dogs who served alongside human officers every day. After the presentation, a woman approached Sarah hesitantly. She was young, maybe early 30s, with dark hair and cautious eyes. Beside her stood a girl of about 13, thin and pale, wearing new clothes that looked too big. "Officer Mitchell?" the woman said softly. "I'm Elena Martinez. I'm with Child Protective Services. This is Lucia. She's one of the children who was rescued." Sarah's breath caught. This was real, not just statistics in a report, but an actual child standing in front of her. Lucia looked at Rex with wide eyes. "He's the dog?" she asked in accented English. "The one who found us?" "Yes," Sarah said gently. "This is Rex." Lucia knelt down slowly. Rex, sensing her fear, remained perfectly still. The girl reached out with trembling fingers and touched his head. Rex leaned into her hand, his tail giving a soft wag. "He's not scary," Lucia whispered. "No," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "He's not scary. He's a protector." Lucia wrapped her arms around Rex's neck, and the dog sat patiently, letting this traumatized child hold on to something solid and warm and safe. Tears ran down the girl's face. "Thank you," she whispered into Rex's fur. "Thank you for finding us." Sarah had to look away, blinking hard against her own tears. In all her years in law enforcement, she'd never witnessed something so profound. A child who'd been stolen, exploited, terrified, finding comfort in the same dog who'd led to her rescue. Elena placed a gentle hand on Lucia's shoulder. "We should go. You have your appointment with the doctor." Lucia stood, but reached out to pet Rex one more time. "Will I see him again?" Sarah made a decision in that instant. "Yes. If you want to, we can arrange visits. Rex would like that." Lucia's face lit up with the first genuine smile Sarah had seen. "I would like that very much." After they left, Webb appeared at Sarah's side. "That was good, what you did there." She needed to see that good things exist, that there are people and animals who protect instead of hurt. The other 6 kids are saying the same thing. They want to meet the dog who saved them. We're working with their therapists to set it up. Apparently, connecting with Rex might be therapeutic. Sarah looked down at her partner, who was watching the door where Lucia had disappeared, his tail still wagging slowly. He's good at knowing what people need. Over the following months, Rex became something unexpected. Not just a detection dog, but a bridge between trauma and healing. Each of the 7 rescued children met with him, some multiple times. Lucia started volunteering at the K9 training facility on weekends, helping to socialize puppies who would become working dogs. The trial of the 32 defendants began 6 months after Rex's discovery at Riverside Park. Sarah testified, as did Webb and dozens of other investigators. But the most powerful testimony came from the victims. Lucia, now healthier and stronger, stood before the court and told her story. How she'd been promised a job in America. How she'd been taken instead. How she'd been moved from place to place, always afraid, always hoping someone would find her. "But someone did find us," she said, her voice clear and steady. "A police dog named Rex. He smelled where they'd hidden their evidence, and because of him, federal agents found us. Because of him, I'm free. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Guilty verdicts on all counts. The sentences ranged from 15 years to life imprisonment. On a crisp autumn morning, exactly 1 year after the discovery at Riverside Park, Sarah stood in the same parking lot with Rex. The park had been rededicated as a safe haven for children. A new playground had been built. Security cameras were installed throughout. And at the entrance stood a bronze plaque that read, "In honor of K9 Rex, whose dedication and training led to the rescue of 7 children and the disruption of a major trafficking operation. May this park always be a place of safety, joy, and childhood innocence. October 2024. Mrs. Henderson's class returned for the dedication. They were 6th graders now, older and wiser than they'd been a year ago. But they remembered. The same small boy with glasses raised his hand. "Officer Mitchell, did Rex know he was going to find something important that day?" Sarah smiled. "I don't think he knew what he was going to find, but he knew something was wrong. That's his job, to notice what humans might miss, to alert us to danger so we can help people who need it." "Is that why dogs are heroes?" a girl asked. Sarah knelt down and put her arm around Rex, who stood patient and dignified in his dress uniform harness. "Dogs are heroes because they give us everything they have. Their loyalty, their bravery, their senses. They don't ask for anything except to work alongside us. Rex didn't find that cache because he wanted fame or rewards. He found it because that's what he was trained to do, and because he trusts me to act on what he discovers." Lucia stepped forward from where she'd been standing with Elena. She was wearing her volunteer badge from the K9 training facility. "And because he cares," she added softly. "Even though he's never met the people he's helping, he cares. That's what makes him a hero." The children applauded. Rex's tail wagged. After the ceremony, after the children had been loaded back onto their buses, after the parents and officials had drifted away, Sarah sat on one of the new park benches with Rex lying at her feet. The late afternoon sun cast golden light through the changing leaves. She thought about that morning a year ago, about how close they'd come to missing it. If Rex had been less persistent, if she hadn't trusted his alert, if they'd simply gone through with the demonstration and left, those 7 children would still be trapped. That trafficking operation would still be running. Dozens more victims would have been taken. But Rex had known. Somehow, through training and instinct and the remarkable gift of his nose, he'd known that something was hidden in those woods, something that needed to be found. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Webb. "Seized another property in Florida based on evidence from the Carson files. Found 3 more victims. Rex's discovery keeps giving. Thank him for me." She read the message to Rex, who lifted his head and looked at her with those intelligent amber eyes. Sarah scratched behind his ears. "You hear that, boy? You're still saving lives." Rex's tail thumped against the bench. As they walked back to the patrol car in the fading light, Sarah reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. She'd become a K9 officer because she loved dogs and wanted to serve her community. She'd never imagined that her partner would become instrumental in breaking up a trafficking ring, that his nose would lead to the rescue of children from unimaginable circumstances. That one routine morning in a public park would change so many lives. But that was the nature of this work. You showed up every day, you trusted your training and your partner, and you stayed alert to the possibility that something extraordinary might happen in the most ordinary moments. Rex hopped into his kennel in the back of the patrol car, circling twice before settling into his bed. Sarah closed the gate and stood for a moment, her hand resting on the vehicle. From somewhere in the park, she heard children laughing. The sound carried on the evening breeze, clear and bright and free. That's what this was all for. Those sounds, that freedom, the knowledge that children could play in parks without fear, that monsters who preyed on the vulnerable would face justice, that there were protectors watching over the innocent. And some of those protectors had 4 legs and a remarkable sense of smell. Sarah climbed into the driver's seat. In the rearview mirror, she could see Rex already dozing, his head resting on his paws, his breathing deep and even. Tomorrow they'd be back on patrol, back to routine traffic stops and community visits. But they'd both carry this with them, the knowledge that when it mattered most, when lives hung in the balance, they'd been ready. Rex had done exactly what he'd been trained to do. He'd detected a threat. He'd alerted his handler. And because of that simple act of doing his job with unwavering dedication, 7 children were free. That was the quiet heroism of working dogs, not dramatic chases or violent confrontations, just showing up, doing the work, trusting the training, and never stopping until the job was done. As Sarah pulled out of the parking lot, she glanced once more in the mirror at her sleeping partner. "Good boy, Rex," she whispered. "Such a good boy." And in his dreams, Rex ran through forests and fields, his nose to the ground, forever searching, forever protecting, forever being exactly what the world needed him to be. A hero with 4 legs and a heart bigger than anyone could measure.